Hello, we are team 1 of the CIT 360 group. This is our final presentation on our group project.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and go over some of the details of the app well, mostly Anthony put together. And the idea that we had was just a simple flashcard app. Should be able to see here on the screen that we've got a simple diagram showing the basic idea of what we wanted the app to do. Obviously, typically the students and the tutors are going to be the ones who are going to be using this app to study whatever it may be. You can create your own decks of flashcards. You can time yourself. We'll go into more details on the timing later on in the presentation. Most of the functionalities there of what you would expect from a flashcard. The timing is something that was added in that was very helpful, and most of us would be able to use a lot more, just because then we're able to get that information faster. And that was the end hope of this flashcard app, is obviously to help study and be that much more effective for students and then tutors to help those students or those of us who are studying a topic. And now we'll have Anthony go through and show us the working example, or the working app itself, and some of the details behind making that.
Thanks, Arden. Okay, so I'm going to show the basic layout of the app and then run the app. So it's using the MVC pattern. I also have an application controller in the controller package, which basically is in charge of all the views and flipping through the views. And now I'm going to run through this. And also in the model, we basically have deck model, flashcard, which a deck is basically a set of flashcards, and a score model, which is basically contains the ID of the deck and an ID of the user. And so I'm gonna run the app and just show you. Okay, so first of all, you can log in. We can create a user. I'll just log in, and it works to authenticate users. So if I put in something wrong, it won't log in, but obviously I logged in. So here's the main menu. It's not too pretty, but it's functional. I click on my scores. It brings up a list of basically the names of the decks, my username, and the scores, and the date that it was taken. So that's something really cool. And so I can create a deck. If, let's say I want to, I don't know, create a deck, talk about movie actors or something. I don't know, you want to make flashcards about that, but let's do it. So here's a basic deck view. You can add a flashcard, you can edit the deck's name, or delete the deck. And I'll just add some flashcards. I don't know, who acted in Ben-Hur? Charlton Heston, right? Okay. So let's go back, and there you can see we have a list of flashcards, and if I want to, I can edit the flashcard, or I can delete it. So I can just delete it, and now the flashcard's up there. I can actually delete the deck as well. And if I go to my decks, the deck isn't there, and this is basically a list of this user's decks. Now, all the users have access to everybody's decks, just because it's just a nice way everybody can share their decks and study. So if I want to study algebra, just click on here, and here I'm just setting the time of the quiz, of using the flashcards. So once I hit start, we have here the timer and the question, and I just have to put in the answer, 5. And if I don't make it on time, it gives you my score, 1 out of 2, and time is up. If I go back, let's see, I can do it again. Let's do algebra again. Let's make it 10 seconds again. And here we go. So this is 500 and 5. So basically, the controller is basically checking whether my answers coincide with the flashcards, recorded answers, and that's how the score is configured. If I go back, I can come here and I can check on the scores, and you can see here algebra I got 100%. That's where I did it, and then this one also 50%. So this was the basic idea of the app, and it's all running perfectly. And so yeah, and right now, sorry about that. Right now, Albert's going to be talking a bit about the timer of this application and kind of the difficulties on that.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay. So, like Anthony said, I'm going to just quickly go over the timer, which was something important that we wanted to implement in our flashcard app. And like we had planned, we got it to work, and so that fit our schedule. So first off, when Anthony set the timer, let me just look. So right here, sorry, right here, when he clicked the timer and set the time that he wanted to for the quiz, this is just the view of it. And once he clicked it, then it calls the countdown function that's down here in the code, which implements threading within this function. And this is pretty much just the layout. So it tells you the border, what the timer looked like. It listens for the event, the click event, and then here's the function that within it. So it takes the time, your current time, on your computer, and it will set it and start counting down from the time it receives from your computer. And then once it goes all the way through, it'll stop the timer and send your score all the way back up to the previous the function that you set up, the function that sets up the countdown function. And that is pretty much what the timer does. And now we'll hear from Arden, who will talk a little bit about more of the code.
Awesome. So let me get my screen up here. So this is where Anthony kindly implemented the JSON class that he's got here. I'm going to talk specifically more about the JSON. I'm not going to go into details too much about the URL connections that he's made here, but he did make the connection of going up and setting up a local website, and that's where it's making these connections with post and get, and using PHP to do that, it looks like. So here we have a few functions. We've got the add deck in JSON, and the fun part here I thought I did a really good job with was implementing an array list here for the deck and iterating through that. And as we go farther down, so up here we've obviously started to create the JSON and work with it, adding elements and whatnot, using those URL connections to the local website. And then down here towards the bottom, which was, I struggled with my own personal app, but down here we have, we're writing these elements and these decks and whatnot to the JSON file called items text. And Anthony here in a minute will show us that file and the output itself. But it was, once we write to that file, we're able to see a little message that shows up that says successfully copied to JSON. And here we're writing it to that items.txt. So it's basic run through of the JSON that's being used within this flashcard app. And I'll hand it over to Anthony real quick to show us that output.
Okay, so here is it basically prints out a total list of all the decks. We have the ID of the deck, the ID of the user that created the deck, and the name of the deck, and it contains basically a set of all the scores as well as a set of all the flashcards. And let's see if I can. You can see question, you can see the answer. These are the flashcards within the deck. So using this, I can actually call this text file and create all the deck objects, using this file, basically this JSON string right here. So yeah, that's that.
Now we'll hear from Logan.
You there, Logan?
All right. We used a Scrum methodology because with the setup of the semesters here at BYU, Idaho, it's kind of like a sprint to the finish anyways, and so this really worked out for us because that's kind of what the whole idea behind the Scrum was. And so we had our weekly planning meetings, and we talked about each week we did talk about the app and what needed to be done to get the app working, and it kind of worked out that we were all kind of the product owner because we all had come up with similar ideas for what the app, what we wanted out of the app anyways, and so in the end I feel like we all kind of took ownership of the idea behind the app, and so it kind of helped push it through. And I will say this, that Anthony definitely was the sprint master of the group. He definitely was the one there to and the project lead, I guess you could say. He really was there to help the rest of us stay on task. And I think that the only thing that really held us back was just making sure everybody was there for the meetings and stuff, because we had such a big team, and I think we had somebody drop out of the group, and it was a while before we realized that they had dropped out of the group because the group was so big that we just thought they weren't responding to our messages at first. So that was really how our methodology worked for us. It really made it so that we were able to get everything done, and we were able to see the finished product.
Thank you, Logan. Now we'll hear from Jay, who will give the conclusion of our presentation.
All right, thank you, Albert. I just wanted to quickly review our schedule that we kind of took as we tried to complete our application here. We didn't really hit a lot of detours. We kept to it pretty well. Sorry, I'm starting on the wrong slide here. What we did is we divided our backlog items, our main features and our apps that we needed to develop, up into 5 weeks, where we would work on one main thing per week using the Scrum method like Logan just talked about. So what we did for week 1, we basically focused on the creation of the deck class.
as well as the methods that it would require to create, add, or edit and delete the different decks, which would in turn lead into week 2, where we actually worked on the flashcard class, which of course would hold the flashcard objects that would have the questions and the answers tied into them, those attributes. Moving on to week 3, we focused on the user interface, and this we had to deviate a little bit here because we were a little bit limited in some aspects with what skills we had at the time. We tried to get a basic user interface kind of design going, but we came back to that later in week 5. I'll talk about in a minute. Week 4, we tried to get the scoreboard running, the class, the database, and all that would hold the scores as we were able to actually use the deck and flashcards to answer the questions and take the quizzes. And then, of course, finishing up week 5, we decided to add the timer class. That was kind of the last-minute feature that was worked on, which was pretty neat. Added a new aspect to the game, give you a little pressure to get the questions right, and we went over that. Albert went into that a little bit. And yeah, once again, in week 5, we had to come back because one of the things that caused us to deviate a little bit was, I would say, just restrictions on, like, as we were learning the topics, we needed to learn a little more before we were able to implement them fully. That was one minor thing. Another thing, like Logan talked about, just we had a lot of hard time getting everyone to be able to show up at the meetings, like just picking a time that everyone could be there. In terms of actual coding things that we struggled with, biggest challenges, I think we agreed, were implementing swing objects, getting views to switch smoothly the way we wanted to, and particularly with the swing, it was hard to get the buttons that Anthony showed us to show up in tables and stuff like that. We just weren't familiar with that. But overall, we did a really pretty good job keeping to the schedule, and it worked out pretty well for us using the Scrum method. So back to you, Albert.
Thank you, Jay. That's our presentation. If there's anything else that anyone wants to quickly express, they have the time to do right now. And if not, then we will conclude this presentation.
I was gonna say I'm pretty happy with how the application turned out. You know, it was really hard coordinating with everybody and juggling, you know, a lot of our different schedules. But, you know, we kept to the weekly meetings and just kept pushing through and just kept trying to get this app done, because it's a really good idea, and just so I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and just trying to implement all the different code topics. It was difficult to do, but I feel like we were able to do so in a pretty useful manner with the app, so, and natural way as well.
I will say this: I felt like the team meeting was in a lot of ways one of the highlights of my week as far as everything goes. I'm taking mostly online classes, and so it was a lot of fun having an excuse to, I guess, socialize with some people that I guess were fun to talk to.
Yeah, it was a good experience. You know, like we've mentioned, it was pretty tough throughout the semester, but I feel like we've learned a lot, whether it was as a team or individually. But it was good working with you guys as much as I possibly could, and appreciate everyone's time and effort that they have put into this class. If that's it, we will conclude, and thank you guys for your time, and that's it. Thank you for watching.